everybody. To be honest, I'm glad that the revenue talk didn't last any longer, because otherwise I would have no cognitive biases left from my presentation. But this seems like a good follow-up talk then. So I thought, because everything around conversion, subscription, paywalls boils down to a numbers game, I thought it would be fitting to start today off with a big number on the screen. But being very transparent, when I first started with these slides, I thought about some funny intros with this number, what this number could stand for. And back then I thought, yeah, no, it's not the Bitcoin price. But this didn't age well, because I just saw it cross 100K. So it doesn't have to do anything with 35K anymore. So now I have no cool reference for this number. But this 35,000 actually stands for the average number of decisions your brain makes a day. And from choosing what to wear in the morning, from what to have for breakfast, how to get here, or at some point today you also made the decision to attend this talk. And all of these decisions happen, or most of them happen automatically or simultaneously, based on information we subconsciously stored about what is good or what is bad. And when making all these decisions, to handle this decision overload, we use shortcuts, or our brain uses shortcuts called cognitive biases. And these cognitive biases help us make these decisions quicker and easier, sometimes leading to making irrational decisions. And this is what I want to talk about today, how to make use of this phenomenon in an ethical way, especially when it comes to subscription and paywalls, and then ultimately help these cognitive biases convert users into subscribers. So maybe as a quick argument why we should actually use cognitive biases on the paywall. So I think we can all agree that the paywall, and you hear this in most of the talks here, is a key element, if not the most important step of the subscription funnel. Because on the paywall, we have the chance to address all the fears, uncertainties, doubts users have when thinking about subscribing to our app, to our apps. If it's like, hey, is it actually worth it? Do I trust this app enough to subscribe? And with these cognitive biases, we can ease their hesitation a little bit. But obviously, these cognitive biases work best if the basics of the product are actually stable. So as basics, I would consider things like, is the paywall shown at the right time? Are the features behind the paywall attractive? Do the wording and visuals provide enough context? And so on. So if you can check, or is the pricing reasonable? So if you can check these off, and should still work on them, of course, then we can throw cognitive biases into the mix. So now your brain needs to do only one final decision before we can dive into some of them. Namely, do I actually believe what this guy on stage is telling me? And I can't convince you fully, but I will try to make a short point. So in the past, I worked 3 years at Yahoo, a relatively known calorie counter or health and fitness app, where I worked on optimizing the subscription funnel with experimentation, with a lot of testing. And now for 2 years, almost 2 years, I work at Prematch, an app for grassroots players. And I think I have to use like 30 seconds or a minute to do a shameless little plug for Prematch, because I can imagine most of you are aware of the concept of a calorie counter, or may have even heard about the app Yazoo. But when you hear like grassroots players, like what the hell is it? So basically, Prematch is giving all non-professional football players out there, like the million of amateur players, a platform to track their stats, monitor their progress, follow their friends, like with the social aspect, to just give them a different lever to live their passion. And there are millions of amateur players, not only in Germany, but in all countries. And to grasp it a little bit easier, you can also think of it as the LinkedIn for amateur players, or the Strava for team sports. I know high comparisons, but I hope we can live up to this when you hear about Prematch in the future. So with that being said, obviously I can't tell you like a right or wrong in doing subscription or paywalls. I just wanted to say that everything I'm sharing with you is actually based on real life or hands-on experiences in the past, as this has been the focus for me in the last years, and I'm excited to share some of them with you. So in the next couple of minutes, I will tell you about some of my favorite cognitive biases. Some of them we already heard about today, which makes it even easier to introduce them to you. But as a quick clarification, these aren't necessarily the best cognitive biases or the ones you have to start with first. The goal here is just to spark some inspiration in your head and about the topic in general to get going into testing and experimenting with them, but nothing like a leaderboard of best cognitive biases. And we start with a very simple one and probably the most well-known cognitive bias in the marketing industry, namely the social proof, which is basically just saying that we as humans tend to follow other humans. So it reassures us to see other people have done it and liked it before, which makes our decision in the end easier and therefore getting to the decision point quicker. And to leverage the social proof on paywalls, you will stumble across a lot of the same elements. If it's user reviews, testimonials, the number of reviews for the product, some famous testimonials written there, or average rating numbers, or I think we all know these App Store App of the Day awards that are placed on paywalls, all with the same effect, trying to give people the feeling like, hey, you don't have to make the decision if it's good or bad. Others have done it already. You can just hit the subscribe button right now. And to follow up with a very similar one, it's the bandwagon effect, which goes into the same direction, that we do things just because other people have done it before, especially if our peers have done it. And how is that used? One of the most famous ones is the most popular tag you see on subscription plans on the paywall, where companies or apps in this case want to nudge you towards the plan they think is best for you, and in a lot of cases also best for them. Or also these like, hey, join the 500K other users who are already subscribed to the product. Or one of my favorite ones, to be honest, as LinkedIn does it, showing the faces of your actual contacts who are already subscribed to the app, as the ultimate real-life trust element. And as you could realize now, like I intentionally chose two very similar biases at the beginning, just to show you, and we also saw this in the previous talk, that a lot of them are built on the same patterns and exist in slightly different forms or even overlap. So also most of the paywall examples you see here on the screen are not using one cognitive bias at a time, but throwing a lot of them into the mix together. The third one is also an evergreen, namely the scarcity bias. And I think when we think about the time we booked our trips here, I'm 99% sure that all of us stumbled across either something on booking.com where like, oh, there's only one room left for this price and 17 other people are watching it right now. Or where I often fall for it, to be honest, is when booking seats at Ryanair and they're telling me like, yeah, there's only one seat left for this price. And yeah, okay, then I will get it right now. And if your answer is also yes to this question, then we've all been victims of the scarcity bias, which mainly means that FOMO, the fear of missing out, compels action. Or in other words, that we seem to value things more that are scarce or limited to some extent. And on paywalls, this is most of the time used by these timely sensitive offers where like, I only have 24 hours to subscribe for this price. But also from websites, you might know these elements where like, hey, 20 other people are currently viewing this product, you should be fast. So it's often used in the same form, but it seems to be effective in giving users like a timely reason why they should do something now. Next up is the anchoring bias, which means that we often base our reasoning and perception on the first piece of information we see, namely the anchor. And this is done in a lot of pretty similar forms, namely by giving the users as first sight something which they understand, like comparing free versus pro, for example, that they immediately know what the value is of the product they are looking here right now. Or, as also mentioned in previous talk, comparing the subscription to real-life expenses, to putting it into a perspective of like, hey, you're not spending €5 on another app subscription, but you're spending €5 instead of 15 at Starbucks for something which will hopefully help you in your life. So, or also when it comes to pricing, again, mentioned before, by putting different subscription tiers and different prices next to each other, so the option you want the users to go for looks more attractive. Number 5 is the Barnum effect, which goes into the personalization direction. And the perfect real-life example for this would be a horoscope, because horoscopes are written and designed in a way that we could all read the same piece of information in this room, and most of us would afterwards think like, yeah, this was really written just for me. And there is something meaningful and true in it. And I'm also a victim of this because I was recently introduced to star signs and horoscopes. And for whatever reason, I kind of believe them now a little bit. But in the app universe, this is often used by very simple measurements or tricks, like making use of users' names or goals or information they inputted in the onboarding beforehand to display them on the paywall, to make a very generic piece of information like a paywall personalized to them. Just by adding, hey Max, here's your weight loss plan to reach this amount of goal until this date. And I'm like, yeah, this seems to be perfectly tailored to me. Or also, nice example, the Bumble paywall, where you see the blurred faces, not only to spark your general curiosity, but putting your actual matches you would have behind this blurred filter to increase the curiosity, because these faces are not the same for everybody, but making actual app content relevant to you. Second to last one is loss aversion, because we all tend to hate losing something more than we admire to get something, because losing something we put effort into getting is considered as very painful by our brains. And as this is most often used in cancellation flows, like, hey, you sure you want to lose this? There are also some things on paywalls which make use of this. Most famous one is the Duolingo streak, which is like a feature and not a paywall element, but let's be honest, one of the most effective features ever, making use of loss aversion, because putting this feature behind a paywall to keep, freeze, however you want to call it, your streak probably generated Duolingo millions, because people just didn't want to lose something they already invested so much into. And also my favorite example of the ugliest, but probably also most effective paywall ever, iCloud. Because whenever I access this paywall, I don't even have the option to make the decision if I want it or not, because I need to get it, because I don't want to lose my pictures. And for whatever reason, pictures seem to get bigger and bigger. And every couple of months, I have to upgrade to the higher tier. So you can look at it, ugly as paywall, but probably generating millions every hour just because of the functionality behind it, namely keeping something which you don't want to lose. IKEA effect, I can't make any better explanation of this cognitive bias than in the talk before. But yeah, putting a lot of value into things you build yourself, and the long onboarding flow is the perfect example. So happy we can skip this one. And now we know at least 7 cognitive biases. And the good news is there are way more out there to be explored and to test. But I think at this point I also have to make a little bit of a reminder that even though I advise you to use and combine these cognitive bias and test and experiment with them, I think we should all avoid manipulating our users by creating false scarcity, fake testimonials whatsoever. Because even though these techniques might boost the sales in the short term, in the long term, we lose the trust of subscribers. And the ethical designs build the long-term subscription value. And there was one I read about Aldi, a very famous supermarket chain in Germany, who just recently lost in court because they were faking the way they are showing the discounts. Because imagine in their discount campaigns, they just made the prices for the specific product higher the week beforehand. So then the week when the product was discounted, they could say, yeah, now it's 75% off. And now they have to include the average price of the last 30 days for the product to not lead users into the wrong way. So just as an example that users can be influenced, but are not that stupid all of the time. So now to the big question. How do I get there? How do I create the best paywall for my product? Answer is equally satisfying and frustrating, because as you also heard it in a lot of talks, you need to start testing, experimenting right away. Because why? Step by step, you will better understand what works for your product and for your users. Because obviously we can make use of existing trends and findings, but in the end, our products differ a lot. But this systematic experimentation will help us get there step by step. And just as a quick reality check, not everything will work. Like, it's not a sprint, and you can't say, okay, 10 experiments, every experiment 10%, then in 10 experiments we double. No, we also heard it in different talks, 4 out of 5 experiments will fail. But I promise you, with every test you're doing, you will learn more about your product and your users. And also a reminder, these cognitive biases should be thrown into the mix, but shouldn't be your only testing material. Like, work on the basics first, and then from time to time, include some of them to get some variety. But because I didn't want to end on this like very disappointing note of like, yeah, okay, now I know I have to test, I want to at least provide you with my personal toolkit for testing. And I see some pictures, because I want to say, if you take one picture of the whole presentation, please make it out of this slide, because it has some really, really valuable sources in there from 2 websites teaching me everything I know about this topic with growth design and build for mass, like really, really great content. And also, last one, not because they are the sponsor of this event or they had the talk before me, was not scripted, I promise you, but RevenueCat is actually a really, really valuable tool in setting everything up, creating the test, analyzing the test, being extremely independent from developers. So this is my go-to tool at the moment for testing and experimentation in general, and highly recommended. And yeah, I think that's it for now. Thanks for the attention. Good luck with your experimentation journey, and happy to hear about the results, and enjoy the day. Thank you.